Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Cheat Code Jiu-Jitsu. Jeff White here again. Still working our submissions from the Kesa Gatame position. Do not really have a name for this one. It's basically an Americana variation. I really should get a name at some point, but I've seen a whole lot of videos of different people doing this, and I've never really seen a name for it. So it's, I actually was able to score a submission with this in my second MMA fight that I ever did, which I will post a link, little snippet of that showing the submission. You can't really actually see it, but I assure you that's what I was doing. This feeds directly off of our last video from the Schalles Lock. I said that there was a really easy counter to that, just straightening the arm out, and if you do that, you're going to walk yourself directly into the Americana as well as a straight arm lock for that. So all the stuff changed together really well, so pay attention if you're trying to throw the last move, the Schalles Lock, into your game. Throw these into it as well as your counters for when that doesn't work, and you're going to have a pretty dangerous combination set up to shut your opponents down, so stay tuned. So we're back in our Kesa Gatame position, and you'll notice that Sebastian's already got his body lock in place. Like I said, very common counter. Most people do this. The submissions that we're going to show today are actually ones that are a little bit more well known than the Schalles Lock, which is one of the reasons that people put this body lock in place in the first place, is so that they don't leave their arms dangling so that they're open for this. So I'm getting into my good Kesa Gatame position. I got my 12 o'clock leg, I got my 9 o'clock leg, I got a pillow for his head, shutting down his bridge. Sebastian doesn't want to dangle his arm, so he puts the body lock in place. That's when I go to my Schalles Lock, I start locking this in, and then Sebastian knows what's coming, so he straightens his arm out. And as soon as he straightens his arm out, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to retract, and I'm going to take an overhand grip on his wrist. It's really important that you do this and not this. I've got to push this down, is what we're going to be doing today. If I turn over like this, I'm flaring my elbow up really high. It does open up a very small possibility, if you've got a long arm guy, of Sebastian reaching around and grabbing a cross wrist grip on me. He could get that. He's probably not going to get it on me, but a really long arm guy might. Plus my push in this position is going to be weaker doing that than doing thumb up, pinky down. So when I do this and he straightens his arm, I retract, keep my elbow tight, and I grab the wrist. Now, where I'm going to go for my submission from here is going to depend on whether this arm stays straight or if it goes bent. We're going to assume, first of all, that it goes bent. This arm is like this at a 9-degree angle. I'm going to push this thing straight down. Be very careful with this. This tends to come on a little bit fast if you've got somebody with not very flexible shoulders. I'm going to push it down, and I'm going to lock this up, and I'm going to stuff it with his hand back behind my knee. Now at this point, controlling this elbow is what makes this position work and makes this submission work. So I'm going to very quickly throw a figure 4 in, and I've got to make sure that this elbow stays up. Now I've got him, he's screwed at this point. This is a very bad position for him. My finish is going to come from 2 things. Number 1, I'm going to drive my hips forward into the back of his elbow, and it's going to torque his elbow forward and twist the shoulder. Number 2, I'm going to take my legs that are in this figure 4 position, and I'm going to draw them back to pull his hand back across the mat. So it pulls back, hips forward, get the tap. Like I said, be careful with that. Sebastian's got relatively flexible shoulders, but if you got somebody who's got really, really tight shoulders, just the action of pushing that hand down and throwing your leg up, you may well get taps from people like that. But as you can see, this action is basically the exact same as an Americana with my arms. I'm just paintbrushing his hand across the mat. I'm doing the exact same motion by pulling back, stuffing this down, putting my leg in, and then figure 4ing, and now my legs are doing the mechanics of my arm. I'm just pulling back, and then the tap would come if I would have gone forward. The thing that you can do to make this a little bit worse, make it a little bit nastier, is you can provide some counter rotation on the shoulder. So in our last video for the Schalles Lock, when I lift his elbow up, I'm rotating his shoulder that way. This time for the Americana, I'm rotating it in the opposite direction. So this is his arm, and it's going to rotate in that direction. If I can actually lift him up with this, I'm going to provide counter rotation. I'm going to take his shoulder, I'm going to take it that way. So the way I get the counter rotation is this arm that's under his head, I'm going to come up here on the crown of his head, and I'm going to actually lift his head up and away while I'm drawing all that back. Just makes the Americana come on a little bit faster. you got somebody with super flexible shoulders, that's a way that you can get it. If you're having trouble really pulling that back, they're not quite tapping, just grab the head, pull up on it, and may make that come on a little bit faster. So one more time, Kesa Gatame, he's going body lock, I slide in for my Schalles Lock, I start lifting, he straightens the arm to counter, pull back, retract, palm grip right there, get that elbow bent, I push it down, lock up, figure four, draw the legs back, hips forward to try to get the tap. If that's not working, I put my lock in around his head and I just lift and pull it away and I get the tap that way. Now, a common problem with this is I do all of this stuff to set this up, but when I go to push this down, this elbow doesn't bend and it comes down straight. Now the good news is I can still get a straight arm lock from here. And you will sometimes get this to where you're gonna shoot this over and you'll notice his thumb is kind of in a fairly optimal position right now for a straight arm lock. And so I'll grab that, kind of tie it up the same way, and I'm just gonna push down with this leg. Elbow's kind of on top of my thigh right there. There's a pretty good straight arm lock that'll happen. That can be there. Here's the problem with that. The limitation is I need to keep his thumb stable to really get that straight arm lock to happen. As long as his thumb stays up, or even if his thumb turns out like that, I'll still get the straight arm lock because I'm getting that pulling back motion, and the thumb position, as long as it's somewhere in there, would be fairly optimal for a good straight arm lock. The problem is that I don't actually have control of his thumb in this position, and it's not that difficult for him to turn it all the way through. And if he turns it all the way through and that thumb is aiming back towards me, when I go to set this up, I don't have a straight arm lock at all, okay? So the lack of control makes the straight arm lock not as good, but you can still finish it. This is what you have to do. Don't bail on it, don't abandon it, change your position, okay? This foot that was locked around comes off, and now I'm providing cover only with this leg. What I need to do now, look at my hips. They're at this angle right here. I'm gonna keep control here of his head, and then I'm gonna slide my hips through. I'm gonna lift him up off the ground, and I'm planting his elbow behind this leg, and then I kick out. I get a straight arm lock that way. It's all about that little angle change, because what I'm doing is I'm turning my body from pushing this way to coming up, and now the fulcrum is on the back of the elbow. When I push my leg out, it makes a really good straight arm lock. And because I have this locked inside of my knee, now I have control of his thumb, and he can't turn it anymore to get out of it. So I clamp that down, push out, and the straight arm lock is there. So, Schalles Lock, go for it. He straightens his elbow. I go to push it down, but this time his arm is straight. If he keeps his thumb right there, no problem, straight arm lock, finish it. If he turns his thumb back towards me, I go for that straight arm lock, but it's not gonna happen. Turn back towards me, there you go. That's not gonna work, so keep a good tight grip here, grab the head, turn up, lift that leg up, and then just kick the motorcycle out, complete the straight arm lock. Between that and the Americana and the Schalles Lock, those are three really destructive locks on the shoulder and the elbow for that arm that's dangling. Again, these are moves that a lot of people don't see coming because a lot of traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools do not teach this position properly. So those are all good moves. They all chain together really well. And so throw those into your game. They'll up your finish percentage really good. If you like the video, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps me out a lot. It helps people find the channel and spread the love. Make sure you also subscribe if you like what we're doing here. We got a lot more videos coming on this Kesa Gatame deep dive. There's so many options from this position. We got a lot more to show you. Make sure you hit that notification icon and you'll get a notification every time I upload a new video. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.